And I guess one last one that I want to quickly plug. There's a really cool, effectively Advent calendar coming from Elixir Distillers from Single Malts of Scotland. And it's got like Imperial in it. It's got a 28-year-old Isla, which is Lafroig, and a 31-year-old Speyside malt. There's 25 whiskeys in it, and they're all like cask strength, single casks. We're gonna use those to do tastings. We're not gonna sell it as a tasting, but if you buy one and you want to take part in the tasting, we'll send you the link. But that's probably what we're gonna do in August, rather than fill samples and do tastings. We're gonna do the Single Malts of Scotland kits because they're hella cool. You can probably find them on our website, but if not, they'll be in the newsletter, the store newsletter next week. And
yeah, that's going to be tons of fun. I'm looking forward to that. Okay, well, let's dive into the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Outturn. We are starting at whiskey number 1, which is Refill Thrill, from a second fill ex-bourbon barrel, 2nd of April for the date. 183 bottles from the Outturn, 56.4% alcohol. This is like right now it's nosing like you dumped a can of Sprite in an old barrel.
I'm a little behind you guys. I just poured mine, so I can see that.
A little bit of wine gums and jujubes.
It's more like an old-fashioned, like sassafras root beer kind of thing to me on the nose.
Yeah, I could see that. Does that have that sort of like rooty and herbal note to it?
Mm-hmm.
Soft touch of ginger in there as well.
I just downloaded that link you sent, Evan, and I have no idea where it's gone on my computer. But anyway, oh, there we go. I found it.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I guess this is still June, isn't it? June hasn't even started. I don't know why, but my mind was going to July. I'm like, I can't see the July outturn.
Well, we have been talking July in the background, so maybe that's why.
Go. Yeah. I confused myself.
Yeah. Really nice palette, like good combination of wood. It's like a softer touch of wood, like it's not full on carpentry, which is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe slightly polished. Some nice fruit notes in there again. I can't remember the name of them, but my mom is in town and she had gotten these ginger candies that almost are a combination of honey and ginger, almost could be a lozenge in style. And that combination of honey and a bit of ginger in there.
Are those the ones that come individually wrapped?
Yes.
Yes. Those are good. I'm more of the I like the raw candied ginger. Like that's kind of for me the way to go, but those are pretty good. Although I do find they stick to your teeth.
Oh, they do. I think I'm still tasting the one from yesterday, actually. And I have brushed my teeth in between.
So we'll take your word on that. Hopefully you're setting a good example for those children of yours.
Oh, I gotta. That's dentistry for 3 children is not cheap. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Just adding a few drops of water to mine for kicks.
Yeah, it's sort of pillowy, soft, quite approachable. I'll try adding some to mine as well. I mean, it's a nice opener. This would be a nice summer dram. But yeah, that honey note's really in there. And I think honey, orange, ginger, kind of the big ones for me.
Yeah, water gives it a little bit more heat on the finish, I find, but adds to the juiciness and that sort of like sweet jujube note or wine gum note on the front.
I still get like a little bit of that woody note too. There's a nice dryness to it, although it is juicy. It's like a very nice.
Samuel, what do you get?
Well, for me, it tastes like 7-Up.
Totally agree.
Like limes and lemons. Without the
7-Up
carbonation.
Slurpee, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go on to number 2, which has a really interesting name. This number 2 is Wickedly Vile and Despicably Dreadful. It sounds like a Halloween dram.
I think we know what they're trying to achieve here. I think this is a bit of a red herring. They're trying to steer you away from something that doesn't smell anything like any of those things. It's an attempt at subterfuge, I believe.
Andrew, Steve, and Lisa have a question for you there. And Steve and Lisa, we really haven't told everybody yet this, but Andrew, we've actually replaced him with an AI. So this is all sort of done by Chat GPT in the background. Yeah, GPT, pardon me. Yeah, that's so yeah, he's working from home 7 days a week right now.
It's funny you should say that because yeah, I mean, I'm perhaps not as often in the store as I was before, and even when I am there, the dog either needs to be collected from daycare or he's at the store and he has a time limit on him where he is no longer a willing resident of the shop. So that's definitely been it has forced me to change my work-life balance, perhaps for the best. And on that note, Steve, I have been getting on my Noli bikes a little more frequently than I had previously. So that's not the worst thing in the world.
Nice.
Yeah,
I think the dog has maybe made you a little bit more, well, you've had something to make you aware of how much time you do spend at the store sometimes, which isn't a bad thing.
And I mean, to be honest, a lot of the things that I need to get done are hard to do when I'm either like people are either coming in and asking me things, or I'm hearing things on the floor. So I get up and I want to go intervene or talk to someone or tell them something. And it's a focus thing. Like there's a lot of things I need to do that I can't get done in the shop. So yeah.
What do we think of this one on the nose?
Oh, it's floral, it's fruity, very pretty.
It's got like a mushroomy dunnage note in there for me as well.
Yeah, to me, it has like a bit of like an OXO note.
Oh, OXO is a good call.
I think if you were to have like a pack of Starburst fruit candies from 2 decades ago that you found in the attic, this is what they would smell like. Like they haven't gone off because of all the chemicals and preservatives in them.
Yeah.
But they're not quite as fruity as they were perhaps fresh.
Yeah. It's opening that pack of hockey cards from the wax wrapper that still has the bubble gum that's still intact but hyper brittle at this point in them as well. There you go. I don't think Bowman had does that have the gum? It's so peachy and tops it. Really?
Yeah, it's a 14 pack of cards plus a gum and a glossy something.
So now you have to crack it open and tell me if I'm right or wrong.
I don't want to. It's not mine.
All right.
But
I'm interrupting.
Broken.
I'm interrupting to get us back on topic here because the palate on this is gorgeous. It is creamy, fruity, waxy, tropical. This is my kind of dram, and it's even got a touch of sweet to it.
Yeah, touch of sweet, a touch of bitterness from the wood, and not in a bad way to me. The combination of the bitterness plus the tropical fruit is something that I really enjoy. Reminds me of some of my favorite cocktails and good amaros in a way.
Yeah, Sammy? I like the palate more than the nose. So I was just saying the nose was a little bit off-putting for me. Like it didn't feel quite connected, but the palate's really lovely.
That's the nose is like dusty old Chesterfield. And it's not a couch. You actually have to say Chesterfield because it's that old.
Sammy, what are your thoughts?
For me, it tastes like one of those like when you go to some of the Indian restaurant, they have like some candy, at the counter. It's like a herbal candy
Oh, cool.
for me.
Oh, do you mean like where they do the like candied fennel seeds like that?
Something like that, something like similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
I mean,
call.
it's funny you said that because like to me in some other ways, there's something about this whiskey that makes me think of dim sum. Like some of those like steamed buns you get with like the meat and the sauce and maybe a little bit of sweetness to them.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we could probably tie together the OXO note from Harmony and the MSG and the Indian candy note from Sammy and just say MSG for everything. That's the secret ingredient in this one. You'll notice all our cheeks are getting flushed. We're having a little bit of a reaction to it, but at the same time, it's so good that we don't want to keep having it.
So Harmony, I don't agree with you on the nose, but except in one context, I think you're right. The palate is much better than the nose. The only difference is I don't find the nose off-putting at all. I find it's like it's teasing me. Like I want more from the nose than I'm getting, but the palate more than makes up for it.
Yeah. I think the nose is really floral and I just not my thing. And then there's this like food note to it that just kind of it can't quite pinpoint. So I said OXO kind of fits there, like, but the palate's really great.
Well, Mike B says, am I crazy to think there's a tiny hint of peat? I kind of get that. And it's reminding me of like years ago, we had an old, I think it was a 78 Royal Brackla or something like that from Cadenhead. And there was an 84 Linkwood from Cadenhead as well that I swore had some peat to it. Not distilleries you'd expect to have it, but maybe just because of casks that they were refill casks they were aged in or something. It kind of got that. This is a second fill ex-bourbon. Maybe there was something peated in there beforehand. Not from a distillery that typically peats their stuff though.
Evan, this is actually first fill. This is first fill bourbon according to the
pardon me. Yeah, I'm still looking at refill thrill. You're right.
I think that this is actually I don't personally think there's any peat in here, but what I think that is that's like a residual barrel char, like a smokiness coming from the charring of the oak would be my take on it. But there's a faint hint of smoke there, but I don't think it's peat.
Yeah, that's that slight smoke plus that sort of like almost acrid bitterness, if you think of it in that way. Plus that mushroomy sort of musty dunnage notes kind of combine to create that style. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Harmony.
I was gonna say, if you lit that Chesterfield on fire, that's what you do.
Yeah, it's the only thing it's good for at this point is kindling. So,
all right.
Okay, on to number 3. Number 3 is lip smacking, citric, and summery. And as I was taking a look at these bottles and setting the lineup, I looked this one up. And this one was, I think, actually a mini bottle originally bottled for a Scotch Malt Whisky Society Advent calendar that they released in the UK last year. And when they bottled it for that, maybe because they just didn't have space on the label, but they dropped the citric. They added the citric afterwards for this one, so it was just lip smacking and summery. But this guy is from a second fill ex-bourbon barrel, 13th of December for the date, 234 bottles, 63.1% alcohol. Does have a nice bit of citrus in there. So put some pretty ripe citrus though for me.
It's it's funny. It's a bit. It's coming across to me like a little bit raw on the nose, and I jumped ahead to the palate too because it's got this sort of vegetal, musty dunnage, like wet leaf litter thing going, and it's got this oiliness which is characteristic of the distillery this is from, which I will not reveal. But in a lot of other ways, the whiskey is not typical of this distillery.
Yeah.
But when you get to the palate, I think the nose This is very spirit driven, and I think on the nose it comes across a bit young and a bit like rough and ready, but the palate actually has got a nice balance to it.
Yeah, I agree. It does have, and I like the palate. It does have almost this like an interesting sort of mango and pineapple meat tapioca thing going on for me. But the palate is much better. It does have this really nice weight of oiliness that settles onto your palate.
Yeah.
Really juicy and style, some nice spice notes in there as well.
Yeah, lots of decadent spice on the palate too. So I mean, it's spirit driven, obviously, you know, from the ABV, from the profile, it's a tad on the youthful side, but it's not rough or sharp or aggressive. It actually drinks really well at 63.1.
Yeah. Adding a few drops of water, the nose goes to milk bone dog biscuits meets Weetabix for me.
All right, maybe Sammy, what do you think?
Well, to me, it tastes like, you know, one of those mango pudding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like going to the Tibetan restaurant and having that like mango dessert.
I'm actually thinking more like, you know, going to a Japanese restaurant, that type of mango pudding.
Cool.
Like the bean paste ones, like where they've got that.
No,
like,
not the bean paste. They usually they have like, you know, a dessert is like a with milk and a little bit like, you know, a mango. They turn it into a pudding. Sometimes they actually put some like, you know, steamed milk, you know, on top of it too.
Well, that's damn tasty. I dare say I like it better without water, even though it is as punchy as it is. Harmony, you haven't given us your thoughts on this one.
I like it. The palate is really nice, very citrusy, nice creaminess. It kind of reminds me of those like swirly candies with like the I don't know, it's like orange and cream, and I never liked them when I was a kid, but it starts with a C. But anyway, yeah, lots of citrus, and I feel like on the finish there, I'm getting like a little bit of like a toasted coconut and pineapples. Like it's just very tropical to me. Yeah, I got nothing bad to say. It's hot, but I like it more straight than with water.
I actually find it hotter with water than without.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it gets very tingly on the palate, on the tongue with water.
Yeah, can't wait to find out what it is and how old it is, because it's leaving me guessing on the age.
Okay, on to number 4. Number 4 is called A Sticky Sweet Spicy Treat. Initial cask was an ex-bourbon barrel. Second cask or final cask was a second fill HTMC hogshead. 12th of July for the date. 106 bottles from the Outturn, 60.1% alcohol.
Evan, the question is going to be asked: what is an HTMC hogshead?
Yeah, they've used this in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society before. If I remember correctly, it means heavy toast, medium char.
Ah,
yeah,
that does make some sense.
Yeah, it wasn't a hogshead that was in the
It's not
Navy
that has the most complexity class.
Yeah, could be. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got quite a. I mean, the nose in some ways is a bit more closed than the other whiskeys. It's also, I mean, showing more of the alcohol when you do really get your nose in there.
Chris, is that some synesthesia you've got going on with this one? Sounds like a Def Leppard lyric. I just hear the ocean when I put it up to my ear.
Wouldn't synesthesia be color though?
Oh yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, if someone smells and sound, I mean, there must be an equivalent to
smellesthesia,
smelling and tasting and color.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, it's good. It's kind of nondescript though.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does go a little bit bourbony. There's probably a reason for that beyond just the heavy toast, medium char of that second cask.
Yeah. To me, it's kind of like the disappointment you get when you order pancakes or French toast at a restaurant, and the menu says maple syrup, but they give you corn syrup, pretending it's maple syrup.
Andrew, I'm just going to check the web orders, and it looks like we just sold 5 of these bottles based on that description. So,
or was it because of the bourbon parallel?
Yeah, it's got a little bit of like linseed oil on the nose.
It's starting to grow on me on the palate, but again, it's very tight. It's very restrained, kind of.
Yeah. I feel
anyway,
like
Sammy,
if we gave this. Sorry, go ahead, Sammy.
I was going to say, Sammy, you prove us wrong.
Sorry. On the nose, kind of open up a little bit after I add a couple drops of water in it.
Okay.
Yeah, like for me, it still smells like some like the skin of like some fruit.
Fruit skin.
I think if you added about 20% malt to this and married it all in a sherry butt, might be onto something.
Yeah. My nose isn't very complex or anything.
The palate does start to come around on it, but I'm still thinking it's corn syrup versus maple syrup.
I quite like it, probably because I am a bourbon lover. It's not like overly complex or anything, but I like that combination of juiciness and again that slightly bitterness coming in from the oak at the same time. So I don't know if that's Steve or Lisa talking, but whichever one it was, I totally agree with you. I am right. On to number 5, which is called Changes Faster Than a Chameleon. 59.7% alcohol. From First Fill ex-bourbon barrels, which is plural, 11th of September for the date, 1,460 bottles, and the 59.7. So a marriage of casks here.
The nose is like if you were to like smoke a brisket, but like you covered it in fruit source bars first. It's like kind of
awful.
I was gonna say,
why is that awful? I love both brisket and fruit source bars.
I know. I just think the idea of them together just sounds weird.
Well, think about it. Like sometimes in a fancy restaurant, you'll get like your elk and then like some kind of berry fruit jus or whatever they call it.
Yeah.
That little bit of fruit and sweetness with the meat works kind of nicely.
Yeah, there's also like a hint of creaminess in here.
Yeah, I can see that. I'm gonna go weirder though. This is like you made a salad with a combination of like freshly peeled and sliced white onions, pork rinds, and a little bit of blue cheese, and then just added a little bit of malt vinegar to it.
I think you're missing like a blueberry compote or something on top of it, just to like top it off.
I guess there's a bit of fruit there. Yeah,
it's in the
blueberry
dressing.
compote. Yeah, like just a one slice of a poached pear, just for kicks.
Yeah.
Oh man, juicy fruit on the nose, on the palate.
Oh yeah, and there's like a little bit of spices in there too.
Yeah, salty, coastal.
Mhm.
Cinnamon, licorice, black licorice.
Still has that touch of malt vinegar too for me.
It's meaty and a little bit smoky,
Hmm.
like an ashy peat smoke.
Mhm.
Yeah, John, this was our entire afternoon was just rehearsing that last 5 minutes.
Oh, John, if you knew anything about us, you'd know there's absolutely no rehearsal.
Yeah, that's right.
Zero preparation. We go into these things blind. Yeah, you're giving us way too much credit. We have nowhere near that much time or planning ability. Is that the right thing?
No,
It's probably
yeah,
starting to make us
absolutely
look bad.
I think if anything, what we do to plan for Scotch Malt Whiskey Society tastings, at least for me myself, is I kind of turn off my filter, where it's I mean, I try and not to swear too much, although some do slip through every now and then, but I just go for the weird, just because it makes it more fun.
You do have to be 18 to view our videos on YouTube and Facebook, so that's okay.
Absolutely.
If it gets a little more than PG.
I think we talked about this with the specific distillery before, but it's all dressed potato chips. Like you get the sour cream and onion, the salt and vinegar, the ketchup.
Evan, I can top this, not because I'm just trying to be that guy who tops things, but last night I had all dressed nacho chips.
Ooh.
Like who knew they were a thing? But like you're adding the spicy and the cheese to like whatever the hell is on all dressed chips. I don't know, like the vinegar and something else. Yeah, that's it.
Nice.
There's a nice oiliness to it. You know, a little bit of a funk coming through. It's growing on me a bit.
Who makes these chips, Andrew?
I believe my wife acquired them from a company known as Doritos.
That's good, because I was thinking with your all dressed nacho chips, it made me think there's a little bit of Cool Ranch on the palate as well. So
yeah.
Jenny does love the Cool Ranch. I'm more of a sweet chili heat guy myself, but yeah, she's big into the Cool Ranch.
Yeah, I like the sweet chili heat too. Best chip, not health wise, but for making a taco salad.
I love that idea. For me, it's like I want to veg out and drink beer and eat chip. So it doesn't happen often, but when it does.
Did you guys try this with water?
No,
because I'm pretty certain I added a few drops, but it was almost like it just like went into a black hole. Like it didn't really change at all.
It just got bigger.
It gets maybe a little bit more seaweedy or kelpy on the nose.
It's smokier and funkier on the nose with water.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, yeah, water just soaks into it. It stands up to water pretty well. It doesn't fall apart at all.
No, I accidentally like plugged my water in here, and it feels like the same whiskey, just without the ABV.
Yeah, the alcohol level might not have even changed. It seems like.
This is a weird one. I don't know how I feel about it.
I really like it.
I want Doritos, which I've never said in my life before. But yeah,
we gotta start treating this like a Twitch streamer and start getting sponsorships and stuff like that.
Yeah, we'll be right back after these messages.
Okay, on to number 6.
Evan, I only hope that we don't get shut down on YouTube for sharing a Doritos bag.
Luckily the chat window doesn't show up there, so
yeah, only the people in the chat can see the Doritos tangy all dressed nacho chips. They're like those Parma Violet candies or Thrills gum. They're kind of disgusting but enticing at the same time.
Yeah,
it's kind of like you have one and you can't stop eating it, because you're trying to preserve that fractional window of something that tastes good
Yeah.
and prevent the bit that doesn't.
Yeah.
Uh,
See, I can't quit you of candies and snacks.
I suppose.
On to number 6, which is titled One Fancies a Sherry. And I feel like I probably should have said that in more of a
Oof.
British accent.
you can say it again.
Yeah, I'm not going to even try. I'm just not there yet, ABV level wise, I guess.
Yeah. But what about, do you have any Grey Poupon?
Yeah, that I could probably pull off. So I don't think Kelly hit much on this one. From the looks of it, this is Speyside and Regent. Ex-bourbon hogshead for the starter. First fill PX Barrique for the finisher. 13 years old, 4th of August 2008. 224 bottles from the Outturn and 55% alcohol.
I'm
Oh,
gonna
man.
take a stab out there. I don't think Kurt would like this one.
Oh yeah, based on the nose.
Just on the nose.
He's
Just based
he's-
on the nose.
this. He noses it and then he puts his arm right up and says goosebumps right here.
Yeah. Yeah. What is that word? What is the word that Kurt is immediately going
Yeah.
to, whether he's right or not?
That is like you mentioned chicken oxo earlier, Harmony on another one. This is
Mhm.
full on beef itchy band packet
Yeah.
on the
Mhm.
on the
Or
nose.
like beef, or like beef bouillon cubes, those like
Yep.
those beef broth cubes,
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
where
spice and
you
short rib.
you accidentally touch one with your finger and all the moisture is sucked out of your body.
Well, that's what happens to the palate when you take a sip.
Mhm.
It reminds me of like a Fig Newton.
Mhm. Yeah, it does have that sort of dates and figs note along with it's actually not as savory as I expected on the palate based on the nose. It's much more fruity.
Yeah.
It is, I don't want to be that guy, but like, I think it's sulfur.
Yeah. Could be. It's not like offensive for me though.
Hmm.
Remember how I was saying earlier today that Andrew and Kurt are like the ambassadors of Kensington's wine sensitive market?
That's right.
Yeah.
We're just particular, that's all. I
Yeah.
don't mind sulfur at times. I mean, I'm not suggesting this is what it is in any stretch, but it reminds me of like where Glen Rothes often goes in sherry, and I
Oh,
just
yeah.
don't
Oh,
love that
okay.
stuff.
Yeah.
I would say it's got a bit more touch of dark chocolate
Hmm.
and not just like full on dumpy the way a lot of Glen Rothes is.
Mhm. Well, there's some nice fruit there. It's nutty, but
Mhm.
it's musty and
Ooh. It
Is it
goes
possible-
into sorry, go ahead.
go ahead. No. You probably better that you say something.
Yeah, since we're trying to sell these.
No,
with
that's
water.
that's not my that's not my concern, but go ahead.
It with water, it goes into like the hell of a good dip, onion dip that you can get.
Mhm. Yeah, my mother and father-in-law are big fans of that.
Chocolate and beef stock mousse, says Chris.
Mhm. Chris, that's a great note because I do get where you're going with the chocolate notes on,
Mhm.
especially on the nose, even on the mid palate as well.
Not to be a total Debbie Downer, but is it possible that this is also corked?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think it's cork, but I do agree with you. I think it is sulfured a bit.
Well, and there's this like musty, kind of I don't even know how to describe it. Like
It comes out more with water too, what you're talking about.
it's like fungal. There's like an almost fungal note to it.
Mhm.
Yeah. I think the word is mushroom.
Yeah.
I love mushrooms. Well, some of them anyway.
It does
Not
have
this
that,
one.
but it doesn't like corked whiskey and corked wine for me when it's full on corked. And we did have one was it just last month? I think was just
Yeah,
last month.
it was the Tullibardine, wasn't it?
Goes into a massive wet cardboard note. And that isn't on the palate for me or the nose. And the palate's actually there. Like a corked wine or whiskey, the palate just dies in the mouth for me, whereas I'm still getting flavor after the finish on this one.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I could be wrong.
Mhm.
Get some really nice sort of perfumed and floral tea-like notes with some water as well on the nose.
It could also be like this. Is this a sherry finish, Evan? Is that the?
It is.
So it's like double
First fill
sherry,
PX.
right?
Yeah, single sherry because it was ex-bourbon hogshead to start.
Okay. It could also just be that it was like a really wet fill sherry, and that's what's giving some of these notes. But yeah, it's not my cup of tea, but I'm glad to see that there's people here who like it, because this bottling was selected to celebrate Her Majesty's Platinum Jubilee.
Yeah, perfect timing. By the way,
Yeah,
couldn't have planned it better.
And funeral. I don't know if it's
Yeah.
a dual. Is it too soon? Is it too soon to joke about that? I think she was a great lady. She did a lot of great service, but
Long live the king.
long live the king, I guess. We'll see.
Yeah, this is definitely going into the, I would say the manufactured sherry side of things for me, where it's like the sherry has taken over the whiskey in some manner, but it's not like cloying for me. I do actually quite like the meatiness and the savoriness that comes along with it, because I find that it just keeps it from going into that fruity and dumpy territory in such great fashion.
Well, there is a remedy though for any of you who, like me, maybe are finding this one does not tickle your fancy. You could go back to whiskey number 2, the red herring whiskey, and be brought right back to your happy place.
That's if you do go back to number 2, that is full on cigar box right now for me on the nose.
No, there is a, I can't remember who brought it up before about whether there was a touch of smoke in there. Like, it's more prominent now. I still think it's barrel char, but it's tropical fruit and smoke, and like you said, like tobacco and cedar. Like it's
cedar plank for sure. Like it has that sort of like spicy dill note that cedar planks sometimes get, especially if you put dill on your salmon and on a cedar plank, I guess.
Indeed.
Still has that mushroomy note too, but in a good way for me. Harmony, I do get what you're saying for not liking number 2 as well. It reminds me of, there were a series of mid-20s Glen Grants that we had from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society closer to when I first started doing the tastings that I did not like at all. And they were so done and heavy. And so like, it was like vegetable cuttings in the that you were sort of composting. Like it just had that earthy sort of like deteriorating note to it that I couldn't get behind. I think it's kind of like peat, where at some point I just learned to love it somewhere along the way though. Yeah.
Well, and the more you talk about like salmon planks and seafood planks, like I'm out. That's not my jam.
Sammy, we haven't prompted you to share your thoughts on this whiskey yet.
Kind of remind me, that Solaris sherry, I tried maybe about 6 months ago, the one, from Spain. Kind of remind me, that kind of like, sherry cask they use, because it has a little bit like savory taste to it. It's not 100% sweet.
Yeah, sherry's interesting because it does get these savory notes to it, and sometimes even for me, kind of like rum, you almost get like a plasticky note to it as well in some cases.
Salty and sometimes meaty. Yeah. All right, shall we to the coast and the kiln?
Yeah. From Coast to Kiln is number 7. Ex-bourbon hogsheads for the initial cask, plural. Final cast was the first fill ex bourbon barrel, 27th of January for the Outturn, or sorry, date 237 bottles to the Outturn, 63.3% alcohol.
I'm immediately like taken to a place where someone's got like a wood chip burner stove. Like I can smell the wood chips. I can smell them burning. I can smell the ashes and the coals. It's just like this really clean, ashy, woody smoke.
So
With,
it's a deleted scene from Fargo, is what you're saying.
Or it's like Sean and I hanging out at the old, or what is it, that cottage at Ardbeg, the Seaview cottage at Ardbeg, and trying to figure out how to get the wood-fired burner going.
It is like very coastal. The from coast to kill note, I think, applies mightily.
Andrew, you were talking and I was immediately like pulled into like a nice cedar sauna. The cold, and you're just putting it on.
Maybe a wood-fired sauna, like an old school Finnish sauna.
Yeah.
It's got a little bit of camphor or tiger balm in there as well.
I can see the tiger balm. That's a good note on this one.
Yeah,
The nose on this to me is a bit muted, but I think the palate really shines. It's honeyed, gentle peat, kind of apricots, dried apples, and yeah, it's a nice, tasty, fresh, coastal, lightly peated whiskey.
Yeah, Harmony mentioned that she was having burnt ends just before this, and the start of the palate reminds me of that burnt end sort of like barbecue-y note, like even in sort of that tangy and texture style that it starts with.
it totally does. And there's like I made my own sauce too, and there's even a note in here of like that apple cider vinegar, like that malt vinegar note that I find on the palate.
Totally. It is a really nice palate.
Yeah.
Is it wrong for me to point out how weird it is that so many people's mind went to putting a human being through a wood chipper?
These are our people, Andrew.
Yeah. Well, you got to remember that a lot of us, our only experience with a wood chipper is through seeing one on TV.
Yeah. And not to stray too far off topic, but it's amazing how they somehow made the disposal of a human in a wood chipper humorous.
Yeah.
In that movie.
Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, back to the whiskey.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I like it. It's different.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna add water to mine.
It does really have that combination of like baked apples, but like tart apples at the same time, with that apple cider vinegar note on the palate, and it kind of goes back and forth in a really fun manner for me.
Yeah. And at the same time, it's like if you bit into the seed or like the core of the apple.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Don't you know?
Pretty sure Normie Gunderson's not taking part in the tasting tonight.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's
takes the water really well too.
The first round.
It dries it up a bit for me with water.
Yeah. Yeah, I was fine with it both ways.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's go back for the reveal. I guess I've got to put these live while we go to Andrew. Are you sticking around, or do you have to run?
I'm gonna stick around for a few minutes. Probably
Awesome.
can get through. We'll probably get through the speed round here.
Yeah, that refill thrills. It's so topical. Lots of citrus. Still that 7-Up note or Sprite note.
Well, when you say topical, it does kind of have a bit of a sunscreen note too.
Only if it's aerosolized.
Yeah, that's aerosolized sunscreen, weaponized sunscreen.
It's also, if I'm not mistaken, Evan, and I'm sorry if this is too leading a statement, something of a redo.
Yes. Yeah, this one was definitely refill because it is our returning bottle. I like this one the first time around. It did kind of get lost in the shuffle when we did have it back in November of 2022. I'll share the link. So Refill Thrill is, I might as well share my screen here. Scotch Malt Whisky Society 91.32, 154.99. This is 12 years old. No shock here. We're starting with the Space Cider. And part of the spicy and sweet flavor profile, distilled on the 2nd of April, 2009 to make it 12 years old. And yeah, we do have some bottles remaining of this. It was originally in the November 2022 Outturn, if I recall. As I said at the beginning, we do feature one returning bottle for the summer months of June, July, August in the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Outturn. To round out the order. Yes?
I think there's actually only one left. When you say bottles, there might only be a bottle.
Oh,
left.
maybe we sold too many in the interim.
I think so. But I just want to comment on two things because I remember that November Outturn, and I remember, I don't want to say not liking this whiskey, but I mean, it was just, I think I took issue with the word thrill because I was not thrilled by it. I've enjoyed it a lot more tonight, and I think it can show you that time and place can play a role in these things.
Absolutely.
Time of year, where your palate's at, all those different things. I found a much more enjoyable whiskey tonight. Yeah,
I would say that to that point, like it does come off as more of a June dram than a November dram for sure. For me.
Tyler's calling you out though. He's saying it's an August release of.
Oh, pardon me. Well, Tyler, I apologize then. I could take a look at the notes here, but I bet you're right there. So thank you for the correction.
Well, we have fact checkers on our tastings, and
that's right.
If they tell us that we're wrong, they're usually right. So
that's right.
We'll take that. Yeah, it's drinking a lot better tonight than I think it was previously.
Okay, on to number 2. The one with the terrible name to make you think it's going to be terrible.
Oh man, the nose on that's gotten even better. It's still faintly tropical, like those really bright fruit tones don't fully come through on the nose. It's waxy, it's a bit musty, but damn.
Yeah, so this is, before I do the reveal, it is a sister cask. It actually has 2 sisters that we've tasted so far. One was available in 100 milliliter bottles called Orange Creamsicle Crush. I think there's actually still a few bottles of that left. This compared to the other 2, and I'm trying to remember the name on the other one. It was just in April or May. But the Orange Creamsicle Crush and its sister cask showed fairly similar in style. This one is sort of like, not the black sheep of the family, but it kind of went off and did its own thing, where it does have the DNA of the other 2, but it goes into those musty, dusty dunnage notes. It's got a little bit more of the barrel char coming through, and to its benefit, like it kind of adds another dimension to that style in a really cool manner. Chris, is that I just opened the dryer thing? Is that? Oh, thank you. And Chris is right. Oh, Behave is the sister cask as well. It's Orange Creamsicle Crush. This is 63.101 for the cask number.
Oh, Evan, did we even tell people what distillery the last whiskey was?
No, we didn't.
Because I just want to bring up something. Like, I know, because we've been doing this now for over a decade, I know most distillery names to the number. Like sometimes it needs a minute to process it. I have no idea what Distillery 91 is.
Yeah, actually, I need to look it up again, and I think I had to look it up the first time as well. It is.
I looked it up. It's Ducktown.
Thank you,
Ducktown.
Ducktown.
There you go.
Yeah. Definitely not a distillery we see a lot from.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, look at that. There's only 36 bottlings of it in, what is it
32.
now? 40 years.
Yeah.
So, okay, sorry. Back to Wickedly Despicable. You told people the sister casts. I don't think we've talked about the distillery yet.
Yeah, so 63.101 is the number. This is a 19-year-old distillery number 63, of course, and we've been so lucky to see a couple in this age range of 19 years old being sister casts as well, of Glen Talkers, and Glen Talkers from a cask that did not take over the spirit in as sometimes happens. This kind of lets the spirit sink through. You get the wood as well, but man, is it a gorgeous whiskey. I'll share my screen here. So I think a lot of people did purchase or have tasted Orange Creamsicle Crush because it was in our whiskey calendar. Oh Behave was very well thought of as well. I think Oh Behave is sold out. I could be wrong. But those ones were like soft, waxy, tropical, and just gorgeous, gorgeous whiskeys. This one definitely has more dunnage notes to it, but I really like it for that.
Yeah. I concur. We still have Oh Behave in stock, 63.91.
Nice. And I think we still have just a few more mini 100 ml bottles left. Orange Creamsicle Crush, if I remember.
Glen, just while we're quickly on that, Glen Talkers is such an underrated distillery.
Yeah.
It's one of the 3 core components of the Ballantine's blends. I know that Kurt and I especially are like real suckers for like old refill Glen Talkers bottlings. And I mean, sometimes you get sherried ones too that are interesting, but like the best Glen Talkers I've ever had have been late teens to like 30-year-old refill casks. They get tropical, they get fruity and funky, and yeah, it's a shame that Chivas can't figure out what to do with it because it's just such a good whiskey.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's sad that the only official bottling they have is new to like 40%, and it'd be okay if it got to that level over time on its own, but cutting it down with water just seems sad. Yeah, I credit you and Kurt and Sean for kind of like waving the flag for Glen Talkers and making me pay attention to them as well, because man, even before Orange Creamsicle Crush, but especially with Orange Creamsicle Crush being in the calendar and stuff, getting to try these not old but older casks with that light touch and finesse, and the spirit just mirroring so nicely together with it has been a lot of fun. Back to lip smacking, citric, and summery.
I already dipped into this one. Like you can tell it's a relatively youthful, spirit-driven whiskey, but I really like it. I love, without spoiling the distillery, it's a very naked expression of this distillery.
Yeah. Well, thank you, John. Cost of number 2, 63.101 is $259.99, the 19-year-old. And now back to number 3, lip smacking. So Andrew kind of hinted at the distillery here.
And Evan, are you taking these live, or do you need someone to go in and do that?
I am putting them live as I go along here, and I'll
perfect.
I'll share the link here as well when I get the chance. There is a link for number 3. So this is Scotch Malt Whisky Society number 1.257, so the 257th cask from Glenfarclas Distillery. as is often the case with the Scotch Malt Whisky Society, we're getting to see Glenfarclas in a little bit of a different light, which is always fun. Being from ex-bourbon instead of big sherry. And it shows you the power of the distillate on its own too, in a really cool fashion on this one. It is youthful, but still really nicely put together.
Yeah.
So 8 years old, from Speyside, of course, although Glenfarclas Distillery for their official bottlings do say Highlands, and 151.99 for this guy.
We don't see a ton of these Glenfarclas bottlings anymore. You know, despite that cask number being 257 being relatively high, in the earlier years of the society in Canada, we used to see a lot more of them. But what's kind of remarkable is that for a distillery that doesn't sell to independents and who will sue your pants off if you put the name Glenfarclas on the label, the society's bottled a lot of casks of Glenfarclas over the last 4 years.
Well, not just that, but there's also, like, based on what you see from secret Speysides and so on and so forth, and yes, there's probably some other distilleries that are referred to as such. But I remember for ages there were 40-plus-year-old, one of the finest Speyside,
probably Speyside's finest distillery.
Yeah. From, was that who was
it? Was Douglas
bottler?
Lang.
That
was
right.
Douglas Lang, back before the Douglases and the Hunters saw fit
Douglas
to
Lang
work together anymore.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, other companies have their own euphemisms for it. Like, you know, there's a lot of them out there, and I mean, they make a great whiskey. There's obviously some of it being traded, but increasingly not very much.
Yeah.
Glen Peelers, Chris.
Yeah, not that one.
Which, Evan, do you know the answer to this? Which distillery has the most bottlings? Is it Kalila?
I think it is Kalila right now, because they have passed 400.
Although
Highland Park is up there,
we're
but
seeing,
not quite that far.
We're not seeing as many of them as of late, but I think that might change again. Is it too soon? Should we move on to the sticky, sweet, spicy treat?
No, let's go to it. So did you guys pick up on the fact that this is a grain? Those of you guys in the chat?
Steve and Lisa say no.
Yeah.
I was worried my comments about corn syrup were gonna like give that away.
So that and that linseed oil note, that sort of like slight sharpness they get are earmarks of grain whiskey for me. This one's fairly well masked though. Like it's there, but it's not there at the same time.
It's got that medicinal note that you sometimes get on grain whiskeys on the nose.
Yeah.
And well, to me, it's a little different. And it reminds me, I don't know if anyone here played hockey and used that clear plastic sock tape. This reminds me of the smell. I mean, you've got kids who play hockey. This reminds me of that vaguely yellowish sock tape. My
daughter plays Springette, and I swear she would use up the whole roll in one practice if I let her.
Just twice a round, that's all you need.
Yeah.
Twice
nowadays that gets very expensive. So I try and hamper that. But yeah, that sock tape note is a good one. So this is a grain, code is a G. This is, I showed or did I show the link? I did not, here it is. This is G10.401. Not an old grain by any means, but an older grain than we've seen recently from the society at 16 years old.
I think you shared the wrong link.
Did I?
Yeah, you just reshared the last
Oh,
thing.
thank you. My Control C capability did not work there very well, so hopefully that's the right one.
Oh, this is great. I love this. Nailed it.
Perfect. Okay, so this is G10.41, 169.99, 16 years old, as I said, from the 12th of July, 2005. And G10, I can't even remember that distillery. I'll have to look it up again.
Is it Invergordon?
Let's see, Strathclyde.
Strathclyde. There you go.
Yeah, grain tends to have that sort of linseed oil, like slightly citric note to it right up front. Tends to be a little bit thinner and sharper on the palate, although it does lend itself to some creamy notes. I do like this one. I think it's really well put together. I think that heavy toast, medium char finish probably did help it. It is relatively wood driven, but not heavily wood driven at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, on to number 5, which is changes faster than a chameleon. Oh, still got the pork rinds and onions, but now you're like making s'mores around the campfire at the same time.
It's just the right amount of dirty.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think with all the funky notes, it's probably not going to be a massive surprise where this comes from. So region on this one is Campbelltown. And the good news is, price-wise, as I always say, it's not Springbank. So it'll actually be relatively affordable. And this guy is distillery number, where is it here? Well, distillery number 93, and then it doesn't have a code because it is a batch. So this distillery number 93 is Glen Scotia. Link is in, yeah, Glen Scotia, the other Springbank, as Tyler Drever puts it. That's a good way to put it. The Springbank that you can sometimes find on the shelves. I've become a massive fan of Glen Scotia, partially probably ever since we visited there back in 2019 when I went to Scotland. I think even a little bit before that, just because we've had some nice Scotch Malt Whisky Society bottlings from the distillery. But also some good independent bottlings. We had a fantastic Springbank of our own, an official bottling years ago for a KWM cask. We currently have a fantastic KWM cask of Glen Scotia from the Scotch Malt Whisky Society as well.
No, you mean Gordon MacPhail.
Gordon MacPhail, thank you, pardon me, from the year 2000. This guy is younger, it's 8 years old. From the 11th of September 2013, and it is a batch because it was done, I believe, for the Campbelltown Whiskey Festival, if I remember correctly, the Campbelltown Malts Festival, pardon me, of 2022. And the nice thing about this being a batch and still at cask strength is there's enough bottles to share a little bit more around the world, which means that we got to get some as well.
Yeah, but does not mean that there was a little more to share here. It's still limited.
Yeah.
It should be limited to 1 per customer on our site. And yeah, it's a great bottle. It's not my favorite whiskey in the lineup tonight, but it's a nice bottle,
Yeah.
and it does the distillery justice.
Yeah, and Glen Scotia, I think Springbank gets all the love, and Glen Scotia's kind of been riding their coattails sales-wise, along with all the Campbelltown love that's been happening with Springbank. But for me, Glen Scotia actually goes more tropical in a fun way, which I really enjoy off their whiskey. And this one, even at a young age, has a lot of that tropical youth to it. So it's really cool stuff.
Like Springbank also has that old school whiskey style to it. I think what's cool about Glen Scotia is that it doesn't matter whether it's a peated Glen Scotia,
Yep,
a heavily peated Glen Scotia or a Glen Scotia that's somewhere in the middle, those tropical fruit notes seem to shine through no matter what. And a lot of that comes down to how it's made. The distillery was almost always being run at a very slow rate, part-time. In fact, until about 12, 15 years ago, it was the guys from Springbank running the distillery when Springbank was shut down for its silent season. That's the only reason there was production in the late 90s and early 2000s at Glen Scotia. And it wasn't hurried. And I think that's kind of a recipe to it. I love sharing this one quick little anecdote of back when I visited from the first time, and Rob and Kelly, who are the founders of the Scotch Malt Whisky Society Canada, were with me on my second trip to Campbellton. And they got to see this firsthand. This is before Glen Scotia's had like 2 or 3 renovations. The washbacks were like cast iron. Like they weren't stainless steel. They weren't Scandinavian larch or Oregon pine. They were cast iron. And the fermentation at its peak is violent. It's like broiling and churning. And there's chunks of rust from these cast iron washbacks flaking off into the wash. And all you can think of is like, how does this stuff how can it possibly taste good? And a lot of it just comes down to the fact that everything about it is slow. It takes time. And that iron that gets in there, that gets scrubbed out by the copper in the stills. But it was this like kind of dilapidated Dickensian sad distillery. And everything you saw about it said, whatever comes out of this place should taste like shit. And it didn't. It was fruity and tropical and vibrant. And I think that's what it's been an underappreciated whiskey, but now I think, as you said, partly because Springbank is so hard to get, now Glen Scotia's in demand because people have discovered Glen Scotia. And now that is getting harder and harder to come by too.
Absolutely. Well, and to go along with that, when Andrew and I were there in 2019, I think the gentleman's name was Ian McAllister, who's kind of the distillery head there.
No, I think that's the guy at Lagavulin, who looks like a Bill Clinton, but with less teeth and a little shorter.
I'll take a look up his name because he was fantastic. And I think he's been kind of the guy that's led or helped lead Glen Scotia into the Renaissance that we're seeing now.
Evan, you're right. Sorry, I was confusing it. It is Ian McAllister.
Okay. So Ian McAllister is a great guy. He was super humble on the tour, and you could barely even tell that he was kind of like in charge of the place when he was showing us around. But this guy has won a ton of awards over the last 5 or 10 years and so has Glen Scotia. And I think this is kind of a time, the last 10, 15, 20 years, where we're going to look back on it as time goes by as being kind of like one of the peak times in Glen Scotia's history, because it was revived. They are making some fantastic spirit, and hopefully, even if Ian leaves, we'll continue to do so. But I kind of get the feeling a lot of it is due to him.
Yeah, no, I know why I was confused. Ian McAllister, I confused him with Ian MacArthur.
Oh, that's fair.
Who's the guy at Lagavulin who used to like take 1960 Lagavulin and massage it into my scalp every time I visited Lagavulin. Because they deemed this cask was undrinkable. Gary was probably there and witnessed him do this to me, and it was usually because I had sarcastic responses to his questions, and he would target me and massage 1960 Lagavulin into my scalp.
The most expensive scalp massage ever.
You know, the crazy thing about Glen Scotia is it's a tiny distillery.
Yep.
It's smaller than Springbank, but it probably makes twice as much whiskey today.
Yep, that's true. Okay, on to the Jubilee Dram. One fancies a sherry.
Is it too offside to say I'm not jubilant about this one?
It is like full on like heavy dark cocoa.
Yep.
Like
And you can be not jubilant as long as you're not spinning in your grave about it. I think that's what's most important.
I'm definitely not spinning in my grave, but
Still has that beef bouillon, beef oxo note to it.
very dry, very nutty.
Yeah. This is like the keep calm and carry on of the Queen's moniker meets the chive on moniker at the same time with the chive notes.
So to me, this is like if you were going to make Amarone, which is made from grapes that are dried out like raisins, but you were to like put them into a leather pouch and use that to macerate them. That's kind of like what this tastes to me.
Yeah.
I do think there was a sulfur note on this. I think it's blown off because it's not there anymore, and that does happen often. But it's kind of almost too over the top sherry to me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I find PX can do that easily.
Yeah.
It happens.
And it's still got this burlap dunnage. Spicy.
Yeah, I like Chris
my
Walker's note. He's still on the chocolate and beef bouillon mousse. I think he is onto something there.
Chris, I think you should be approaching Hayden Block to get that on their menu as a dessert.
That's right.
Like puree, like beef brisket, mix it with chocolate and turn that into a mousse.
With a dusting of burnt ends on top. And
I think you use the fatty ends with maybe some egg whites to create like a little cream for the top.
And then instead of doing like the raspberry sort of like accent on it, like with the raspberry jam or whatever, use their espresso barbecue sauce. So this is 108.58 for one fancies a sherry, 194.99 from the 4th of August 2008, 13 years old. And it was made for the Queen's Jubilee. Sadly, we didn't get it until she passed, but the fact that she did get to a platinum Jubilee is incredible. And yeah, big sherry.
I mean, if you think about it, in a lot of ways, it was the ultimate Succession. You know, everyone got really excited about that TV show. But like it was like the ultimate one. Like that woman hung on for a long time.
Yep.
So
yeah, she was so desperate for her son not to become king, but it happened anyways.
Yeah.
Okay, last but not least, from Coast to Kiln for number 7. How's this one going second time around?
It's young, but it's everything you want from this distillery at a young age.
I totally agree.
Good.
It's got that, and I'm going to use the keywords for this distillery, which are heather and honey. On the nose, a little bit of peat, some nice earthy spiciness going into those earthy mushroom notes again for me on that sweet sort of like you've grilled some mushrooms, but it's you grilled them in some sort of sherry or something to sweeten them up at the same time.
I'm going to bow out at this point.
Sounds good.
I do feel the need to share my favorites though.
Yeah, hit it.
But just because I only have one tonight. It's Wickedly Despicable. I think that's hands down the best whiskey in tonight's lineup, but that's just me. There was a few others. Refill Thrill actually showed way better than I thought it would. I think that's a bargain at the price, but that Young Glenfarclas would be a close third. So those are my favorites. I got to run. Evan, I think that means the recording is going to cut out when I end.
No, because I'm hosting it, so it's all good.
All right. Okay. Well, on that note, thanks everybody. Good job, everyone. Sammy.
Yes.
We need more Sammy. That's all I want to throw out there. So, like
Yeah,
Cal,
you're more
you
than
could use
welcome
a
to
bit
tell
more of it.
Andrew and I to shut
Okay.
up whenever needed. So
Yeah. Anyway, you guys enjoy the rest of the tasting. I'll talk soon.
thanks, Andrew.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, for number 7, Scotch Malt Whiskey Society 4.319. I shared the link there. I'll share my screen as well. So this is a Highland Park, and I believe, I don't have the notes in front of me, but 27th of January 2011, it was the distillation date. This started its life in multiple casks and then was finished in one. And I believe we've had sister casks of this, quite a few sister casks over the last year. All have been really cool though. I quite like this one. As Andrew said, the nose is muted, but the palate is really good. What do you think, Sammy and Harmony?
I actually quite like this one. This is actually, like almost like a dessert dram for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I think it got better with a little bit of time and a little bit of water
Mm-hmm.
for me. Yeah, it's pretty nice.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it
I agree.
definitely it doesn't drink like a 63%er either.
No, it's Highland Park, and we've seen it in the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society quite a bit over the last 3 years, but it tends to have this spicy build on the finish, along with the smoke and peat and the earthiness that I really enjoy finding. This one does have it as well. That's where you get the kiln part of the from coast to kiln, I guess, but really, really nice stuff. So $157.99 for this bottle, 10 years old. And yeah, it's nice to see we're seeing some somewhat affordable Highland Parks again from the society, because they were getting a little bit outrageous and a little bit rare there for a bit. Sammy, did you have 2 favorites from the lineup?
I actually like the last one, the Highland Park,
Mhm.
and also the I hate to say that, but I actually like the Surrey Cask one.
Nice. Andrew's not here, so you're safe at the moment. It's not going to cost you your job or anything. Yeah, Harmony.
I actually struggled with this lineup.
Yep.
But I don't know if my palate's off. I've been like all stuffed up with allergies all day.
It is a hard time of the year for allergies.
Yeah, it's hard to nose and taste whiskey when you can't smell anything. I liked the last one. Like definitively, I liked it. And then it's a toss up for me between 1 and 3.
Nice.
But I didn't find myself like super excited about any of them.
Yep, that's totally fair.
I mixed them all together because I didn't finish them.
Yeah,
and it's not horrible.
That's good.
Yeah.
We call it the harmony.
I might like that Infinity Outturn more than all of them together.
So that's Harmony's tip for this one, is you got to buy all 7 bottles and mix them together to make something even better. I'm all behind that as well. I'm not sure what my favorites are. I was pretty happy with the lineup overall. I did enjoy the one fancy as a sherry, even though I'm not usually a fan of those big crazy sherry whiskeys. I like the savoriness of this one, and I like the dichotomy between the savoriness of the nose and the big fruit of the palate as well. I'm always a fan of Glen Scotia. I really enjoyed that one too. It's so wacky, but so well put together at the same time. And it's one of those things that Campbelltown seems to do better than anywhere else, is make that this is stuff that you wouldn't like in any other whiskey, but we're going to give you this other stuff with it, and it's going to work so well. That the combination of wacky and weird plus great whiskey at the same time. Daft Mill kind of touches on it as a distillery as well, and it's going to be interesting to see what it does when it gets older. But Glen Scotia, Glengyle, and Springbank, all within Campbelltown, seems to do it better than anyone else. So that was cool to see. But yeah, fun lineup overall. The Glen Talkers, I wasn't a fan of it when I first tried it, just because I was wanting something like Refill Thrill, or sorry, the other bottling there in Orange Creamsicle Crush. But the Dunnage note really grew on me on this one. So yeah, fun lineup overall. I have to run, but I don't know if Sammy or Harmony want to stick around. You guys got to go as well.
Yeah, I gotta go.
Yeah.
It's
Sammy,
fun.
do you
though.
want to stick around or?
No, I think it's getting a little bit late. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. Sammy started, he was the first person at work, or one of the first people at work, so he's had a long day.
Well, Harmony was at first today.
Oh, pardon me.
Probably
I
2
beat him
minutes.
once. I would like the credit for that.
You'd think if I doing the schedule, I'd know that, but apparently not. But thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Harmony. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Andrew, as well, for joining in. I hope all of you joining in as well with us enjoyed the Outturn. And hopefully we'll see you in July. I've seen the lineup, should be a lot of fun, and looking forward to it. But if we don't see you before that, have a great night and have a great summer. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks
Okay,
everyone. It's good to see you again.
Okay, bye.
Good night.